Recording in progress.
Sejam todos muito bem-vindos, bem-vindas e bem-vindes. Meu nome é Anastácia Monteiro, eu sou estudante de mestrado no Instituto NUTES da UFRJ e vou ser a mestra de cerimônia desse evento. Gostaria de agradecer a presença de todos e solicitar que ativem o modo de tradução simultânea da plataforma para que possam acessar as falas traduzidas dos nossos convidados. Basta clicar no ícone do globo terrestre, interpretação, na barra do Zoom, na parte inferior da tela. Na sequência, selecione o idioma desejado, no caso português, e clique para confirmar. Caso você esteja assistindo do aparelho celular, clique nos 3 pontinhos no canto superior direito, depois na opção Interpretation, selecione o idioma português e confirme. Daremos agora as mesmas instruções aos falantes da língua inglesa. Também é importante mencionar que esse evento está sendo gravado. My name is Anastácia Monteiro. I am a master's student in Science and Health Education at NUTES Institute, UFRJ, and today I will be the master of ceremony of this event. It is a pleasure to have you with us today, and I will explain how you can activate the interpretation tool at Zoom. Click at the globe interpretation icon at the bottom of the screen, then select the option English and confirm. If you are watching from your mobile phone, please press the 3 dots in the upper right corner, click at the option Interpretation, select English language and confirm. It's also important to mention this event has been recorded. Nesse momento, daremos início ao segundo dia de atividades do ciclo de oficinas políticas.
Today we're going to start the second cycle of workshops in anti-racist policies and practices. This project is a product of a partnership between Institute NUTES and Grace Euclid. We thank the presence of the public, speakers, technical staff, and translation staff. This event is being broadcast in channels of Grace on YouTube and anti-racist policies also in the YouTube. So we have the first workshop, Black Women and Opportunities in Academia, that is going to begin now. And then we're going to have 10 minutes of break. And then we're going to head for the third workshop. We invite you all to book your seats for the third workshop. So now we invite our mediators, UCLAN's Equality, Diversity, Inclusion, and Communities Officer, Sueli Luegere Newlove, and a nutritionist with a master's degree in collective health and doctoral student at NUTES Institute, Tamires Rizzo. We also invite Champika Linage, professor in facilities management, co-director in the Center for Sustainable Transitions at the University of Euclid, and also Professor Ana Lúcia Nunes, who is a doctor in communications and journalism by the Autonomous University of Barcelona and associate professor at NUTES Institute in Health Science at UFRJ. We are going to open later on for questions, and comments can be sent through the channel Q&A at the bottom of our screen. I give the floor to Sueli. Thanks a lot, Anastasia, for this brilliant presentation.
To have you all here today.
Bom
dia, Brazil. Good afternoon, England, United Kingdom. It is a pleasure to have you all here to join us today on our second of the cycle of workshops, international workshops, Grace workshops. And it is my pleasure to introduce you to Professor Champika Linage from UCLan. And Professor, the floor is yours to feel comfortable to start your participation.
Let me share my presentation. Oh, shall I share my presentation or shall I go on?
You can share your presentation, yes. No problem.
Pode compartilhar sua apresentação, por favor.
My presentation is on
Minha apresentação
policies in higher education.
é nas desigualdades raciais no ensino superior.
Before I go on to explain the topic, I will talk a bit about me.
Se eu tiver, antes de apresentar o tema, eu vou falar um pouquinho sobre mim.
In 2001, I completed
Em
my
2001,
quantity survey. This was
eu completei.
And then I came to UK to do my PhD.
Eu sou de Sri Lanka, depois eu voltei para o Reino Unido. O som dela tá ruim para mim.
I got a job as a postdoc research associate.
E consegui um emprego como professor associado na universidade.
In August 2008, I became a
Aí, em 2008,
then went on to
eu
become
me tornei parte da UCLan
became a professor 2 years ago.
E me tornei finalmente uma professora 2 anos
I have
atrás.
to say here that I'm the only first and only female professor in
Eu sou a única professora na escola de engenharia.
Before I go on to talk
Antes de continuar falando, eu quero mostrar.
In topics. So first I'll talk about race and
Primeiro
racism.
vou falar sobre raça e racismo.
You all have. Maybe perhaps it's slightly different.
Talvez seja, vou fazer algumas considerações, talvez seja diferentes.
Higher education. And I'll present a case study, not a case study done by me.
Eu vou apresentar um estudo de caso, não é o feito por mim.
And I will go on to talk about what anti-racism means.
Depois eu vou falar um pouco o que significa ser antirracismo.
Finish my presentation from there.
E daí vou terminar minha apresentação a partir daí.
So in terms of race,
em termos de raça,
different of us have different views on it, but according to the UK Equality Act 2010, it prohibits certain forms of
nós seguimos uma lei do Reino Unido, que é esse ato de 2010, essa lei de 2010.
Color, nationality and ethnico-national origin.
Então, como nós definimos racismo?
And also, this is the UK version of definition of race.
Muito ruim.
But internationally, I've seen, internationally, according to different jurisdictions, race may be considered in different ways. For an example, in some countries, it may frame in a way to protect sometimes indigenous or First Nations identity, sometimes to protect or discriminate language minorities or migration backgrounds. And also some countries actually, as I understand, do not permit data collection or categorization of characteristics in this way. However, in UK, especially in the public sector, we do have data about race, especially in our university also, when we have statistics on, let's say, student recruitment or staff recruitment, we do identify ethnicity and nationality as part of our data analysis. So these are routinely collected in the UK, as I mentioned, especially in the public sector. And I'll go on to talk about specifically with regard to higher education institutions in the UK. We have to understand that different minorities or different ethnic groups, both students and staff, are not a homogeneous group. Therefore, we can't, we don't talk about equity here. It's not, sorry. It's not equity, this is equal opportunities. So given different people's backgrounds, different experiences, and outcomes from or within their higher education, we need to actually consider all these status, especially multiple identities and so on, in order to treat them equally within the higher education system, both staff and students. And when this is not happening, and people think, when people come from different backgrounds, if they are treated the same, that's where we actually fail in terms of equality. So this is not what I say, this is Race Equality Charter principles. And talking about that, talking about racism, in my view, there are three kinds of racism exist. One is personal racism, where individuals have maybe different ideas or beliefs about different ethnicities and racial groups. So often, sometimes, if I'm coming from a different background, I might think that I'm superior to others, and that can actually manifest itself to overt or covert ways. For an example, harassment or hate crime or bias or stereotyping. The second level of racism is actually institutional racism, where racism, in fact, is embedded within the institutional policies and practices. So for an example, in recruitment and promotion, we do talk about this quite a lot at UCLan. We need to understand in the recruitment policies are fair and equal. We even go to the length of making it. This is not about race. If we talk about gender, even now we are talking about making all the job adverts and the job specifications gender neutral. The same way we are trying to be equal or trying to be fair as much as possible for during recruitment and promotion for people coming from different backgrounds as well. So institutional racism routinely leads to differential opportunities and outcomes for different ethnic groups. And the final level of racism is actually systemic or structural racism, which goes above and beyond the two racism types I've mentioned earlier, because systemic or structural racism, no matter how many policies are there for equal opportunities or for anti-racism, it will not change if the systemic or structure doesn't change. So that has to be corrected, or that has to be transformed in order for us to promote anti-racism within any higher education institution. In my view, in many of the higher education institutions and in many of the other institutions, when racism happens, people actually think that it's because of institutional racism, or it happens because it is an institutionalized problem, especially in terms of policies. They think that it happens because there's no equal policies in terms of equality, but that's not the case. As I mentioned, it can happen at personal level or at the wider structural level as well. So I'm sure you have understood from some of the things I already mentioned that racism does exist in the UK higher education as well. It's according to HRC 2019, racial harassment is a common experience for a wide range of students and staff across the universities in England, Scotland, and Wales. So according to that, the higher education sector does not fully understand racial harassment, and sometimes actually university staff lack confidence or understanding even in dealing with racial issues. So this is a huge problem. Until we solve it, we can't get rid of racism fully throughout the UK higher education institutions. So as I mentioned, from both experiences and outcomes, racial inequalities do exist in the higher education system. and it can be seen from different publications through some of their statements. So according to Lokey 2019, they say it is clear that racism exists in society at a macro level. So by logical application, it must exist in each institution to some degree. No university, therefore, is immune from the society in which it is located. And as per Andrews 2018 also, universities are institutionally racist spaces that have had a historic role in producing the knowledge that racism is based on. And finally, as per UCL student campaign, University College London student campaign in 2014, they did a huge campaign on why is my university white, to actually show the level of inequality or racism exists in many universities. So we understand that inequality or racism does exist in higher education institutions in the UK, but this actually is applicable, or this is this can be seen at many levels in the higher education system. It applies for both staff and students. I'll highlight some of my experiences as well, maybe later on. At student level, it exists from the time of maybe recruitment, and it exists throughout the progression, and it exists maybe during award, and it even goes on to post-award, where when they are progressing towards the postgraduate levels as well. And also it exists in the pipeline from an undergraduate or postgraduate student to employability. So it exists at so many other levels. And also, as I mentioned, in terms of staff, underrepresentation of staff in certain job types or contract types or disciplines, and even levels of seniority can be very much seen, especially levels of seniority. If we look at the statistics, there are many universities where no ethnic minority, a person representing any ethnic minority group are not represented in many universities' senior management level. So this is actually quite visible. And also different racialized experiences of professional progression and recognition and award can also be seen. Therefore, as I mentioned, this does happen. Racism does exist at many levels within the UK higher education system. According to some of the data that we've seen, and also in my view, to my understanding as well, students from different backgrounds are more likely to receive education from less funded or less funded universities, or universities that have higher dropout rates, or universities that pay lower salaries. So this is applicable for staff, and have higher student to faculty ratios. So maybe perhaps it's fair to say that the best place, or the most accepted place for people or students and staff from different ethnic groups can be lower rated universities most of the time. Our university, UCLan, is not a top rated university, although we try to do our best to get there, and compared to other Russell Group universities, I believe, maybe Sweli can add that as well, I believe that we have more of a chance as a minority, from a minority group, as a person from a minority group, we have more of a chance of being progressing, and as a student or staff in some of the lower rated universities. So there is a need to promote anti-racism throughout higher education institutions. And this should be applicable to all kinds of universities. I know, for an example, my personal experience, I mean, this is not anything to do with progression or student recruitment or anything like that. But when we apply for funding within the UK for higher education research, sometimes we are discriminated solely based on, not solely based on ethnic group, but based on where we stand in terms of ranking within the UK university ranking system. So since we are, I mean, some not very much low, but since we are kind of mid through way ranking, the amount of funding that we get is very much lower compared to the funding that the Russell Group universities get. So inequality and kind of different treatments or different preferential treatments are given within the UK higher education systems because of your background, sometimes because of your gender, and sometimes even because of your standing within, as an institution, you're standing within the UK higher education system. So this has to be stopped. This is why anti-racism, we need to promote anti-racism in order to kind of get away from racial inequalities. Anti-racism actually focus on transforming unequal social and workplace relations that shape our interactions between different ethnic groups. So in this case, anti-racism is the chain that make these experiences and interactions equal or egalitarian. Also, anti-racism is a change in our perspective. It is understanding that all has gone before us and its impact on how we think, act, and engage with different races. So through anti-racism, we can actually promote working together with different people from different backgrounds, irrespective of whether they're white, Black, Asian, and people from maybe other ethnic groups as well. So all people in a fair institution, in a fair equal institution, all people coming from different of these backgrounds can come together to build new systems that are equal. So when I say new systems, systems that are truly inclusive, irrespective of where you come from or what color of your skin is. So this was highlighted by Ibram X. Kendi in 2019. When I talk about anti-racism, we have to also understand the difference between anti-racism and non-racism, or anti-racist versus non-racist. Non-racist means sometimes I could sit and look around and think, okay, I can't change this. I may be seeing some things that I may not accept, but I might not take an action against it or to stop it. Whereas, so this is non-racist, whereas anti-racist will see things happening and they will not sit around. They will know that you have to be a beacon of light in order to change the systems. So they will see, when they see something, they want to be active and go against the system in order to make a change. So anti-racist is what we all want to be, rather than seeing things in an institution and just be silent without making without taking actions. So in terms of anti-racism in higher education, what we call anti-racism is actually equal chances of getting into higher education, irrespective of person's color or ethnicity. This is applicable for both students and staff. But as I've understood throughout the years as an academic in the UK, it's not just getting into higher education that is a problem, but as a student, maybe after passing or after getting your degree, racial inequities do exist when you go to the job market as well. So if we are to stop that, if we are all to have equal opportunities in the job market, we have to start making a change from the higher education institutions itself. So by making by giving equal opportunities for all students when it comes to apprenticeships, or by giving equal chances for all students in progressing, for giving equal chances for all students in getting the grade they deserve. So we need to make that change from the university level itself, so that they have a higher chance of getting, the students have a higher chance of success when they actually go outside the world into the job market. How can we achieve this? So let's see. Before I talk about how can we achieve it, I wanted to show a case study. So being a person who's in School of Engineering, we are moreover working on STEM subjects. So we call science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. So STEM subjects, if we look at the statistics within the UK, around 23% of all UK domiciled university students were identified as BAME, which converts to about 24.9% in STEM and 16.5% in non-STEM undergraduate degrees. So when looking into the statistics, you can see that our kind of line of work, STEM subjects, do have a higher kind of, they are slightly fairer compared to non-STEM subjects like health, social sciences, things like that. However, even with this slighter fair percentage of BAME kind of ethnic groups within the undergraduate students in the UK higher education, there are still growing evidence to show that the experiences of these minority ethnic students in STEM education are more challenging and difficult. So this could be when it comes to, let's say, practicals. This could be when it comes to getting equal opportunities in accessing supervisors. This could be even in getting maybe when they are applying for promotions, things like that. And again, despite the better representation in STEM degrees when it comes to BAME groups, the metaphor of the leaky pipeline, hopefully I'll be able to explain it slightly better later on as well. Leaky pipeline has been used to describe the relationship between race, ethnicity, and the STEM participation. So when you talk about the leaky pipeline, we look into a student's journey into the university. So student's journey from the point of sending an application, giving them a place within the university and recruiting them as students, going through year by year or progressing year by year within the university and passing out and going into the job market. So usually we call this the whole pipeline of a student education within the university. However, in different points of these milestones, I believe that the students from different ethnic backgrounds or minority ethnic backgrounds may either be falling down the system, or maybe they may actually falling down the system without any reasons. So they are in more danger of falling out of the system compared to the white or white students that we have in the UK universities.
So just to let you know, your time is almost up. If you could
quickly, so, STEM subjects are almost actually students. So therefore, students from minority ethnic backgrounds gradually drop out the STEM system, although they have a higher chance of getting into the STEM subjects. So in my view, there are three types of discourses of racism, as have identified by a case study. So it can be naive, bystander, and victim. I'll go through quickly. So naive means that I see things happening, but I don't do any change. So you are aware of sometimes things happening, but you don't really take actions. And we've seen several kind of statements coming from students with regard to that. Whereas a bystander, they do witness some of the things, but they will only be an observer, spectator, or even a silent witness. So we have seen statements that students have given about that. Like, for an example, they will say, I can't really comment on it, or because people were just so scared of getting called racist, they will not action upon it. So we call them bystanders. And the final one is the victim. Sorry, I'll just pass on because of the time. So victim is actually a person who have actually gone through racial abuse or racial issues. So these are the ones who will need support. And sometimes not these victims also may not necessarily take actions against or actions to stand up. So given these three types, I think one discourse missing is a group who can protest, oppose, or actively defend against racism. So this links to what I called earlier anti-racist. So we need anti-racists within the UK higher education system in order to eradicate racism within the system itself. So I'll pass on these ones. So we have to actually take hardcore actions in order to make sure that we have equality within the universities. And anti-racists should actually be able to make social influences, and they should be able to stand up not just for themselves, but for the others around them, both for colleagues, staff, or students. If this happens, we can actually stop leaky pipeline when it comes to recruitment and progression, and even employability for students and staff. So finally, what can be done? I think, in my view, the three different racism types that I mentioned, all at a top level relate to policies. So we need change of culture within institutions to change people's maybe perceptions. We need change of, we need embedded policies in order to on anti-racism, in order to embed anti-racism within the institutions. And we need robust policies and practices in order to avoid or overcome systemic or structural racism. Therefore, anti-racist policy is any measure that produces or sustains. Actually, this is a good word because it's not just we are not just looking at short-term answers, but sustainable answers where racial equality can be promoted or determined in the long run. So in my experience, actually, I started maybe as a naive kind, and maybe because because I smoothly, hopefully, progressed within the system, maybe I may have become a bystander as well. But after my involvement in equality and diversity through some of our actions, I did become aware of the systems and started to make a change anywhere that I see things are happening. So looking back, I can see that I've transitioned, starting from a naive kind to maybe an anti-racist, but still I am still an individual. Many people within our institutions need to change. So finally, I think at a university level, in our university, I think we have made a lot of changes in terms of equality and diversity and inclusivity, but still there are a lot to change. And apart from UCLan, there are all the other universities need to take urgent actions to ensure that staff and students are aware of racism and they are aware that racism exists, and they are aware of how to change the systems. And one of the ways we can improve that is improve awareness is maybe having compulsory workshops, at least maybe biannually, on equality, diversity, and inclusion for all staff and students, so that we can start from a bottom-up approach. So we need policies as a top approach, but at the bottom level, we need to change we need to make aware of racism from staff and student levels, and that can be done through maybe conducting more workshops such as these throughout the university level or at the higher education system level. So with that, I finish my presentation. Sorry for rushing at the end, and sorry if I've actually run over the time. Over to you, Sueli.
Thank you, Professor. I'll pass to Tamires now to...
Oi, olá a todos. Professora,
hello everyone. Professor, thank you very much for your contribution. I thought it was very interesting, the approach you brought, being a woman in the STEM areas in the United Kingdom. It's very interesting to look at these opportunities that we have together to exchange between different realities, people who are maybe minorities here or not. It's interesting to see how these experiences connect. I thought important to enhance one aspect, how to think about anti-racist policies, to think for a set of policies for the universities. It's not enough to think that just one policy focused in anti-racism is going to respond for everything. I need a funding policy that to advance with the anti-racism policies, cultural policies for inside the universities, core curriculum policies, educational policies, like when we think about the dropout from the university that you mentioned in the case study. You brought a very rich panorama for us to think when we discuss inclusion, diversity among oppressed groups, including women in this part of oppressed groups, Black women, Asian women, Indian women, groups that in this society suffer oppression. Thank you very much. I would like now to pass the floor to Professor Ana Lúcia from NUTES Institute to bring her contribution. Good morning, everyone. I would like to start by thanking the Tamires, particularly for the co-organization of this event, to have the audacity to promote this encounter of institutions, and also to thank Sueli, partner in this organization. I prepared a presentation. I'm going to share my screen. Just a second. Well, I thought that the theme of the workshop, Black women and opportunities in the academia, I thought it was very challenging. I have talked to Tamires about this. It places us in a very difficult place to start thinking about to think about the challenge that we face and how to create opportunities, being a group that is not really empowered within this universe of the academia. I start by commenting the issue, what brought to my thinking when you talk about the place of Black women in the academy at the university. I became a professor in 2018 at the Federal University of Rio de Janeiro, and since my this beginning, it was not comfortable to occupy this place. I'm not too sure if it was in the late 2018 or 2019. A colleague, Professor Gustavo, asked me to talk in his class about decolonial thoughts. Of course, I didn't talk about decoloniality just. I I talked about what the theoreticians outside of the North axon, what we call theoreticians out of the center, we call. And it was in this opportunity that I used this graph that you can see here. Is it is from the census from the higher education 2016 in Brazil, and this graph demonstrates how the majority of the professors that work in the graduation course, the post-graduation course, that's the higher level of the academic in Brazil. So they are white men uh, and white women, the majority. When we are going to look at Black men, Black women, which are the two last ones in the bottom, homens pretos, mulheres pretas, eh, we would see only about 3% of Black women. And putting together what we call brown women, mulheres pardas, and Black women. And if it compared 3% compared to the population of Black women in Brazil is 28%. The largest percentage of the population in Brazil are Black brown women. But when we are look at the quantitative distribution of this population among professors working in the post-graduation, and this number is 3%. And if we just think about Black women, the number is even smaller. But as a researcher, more than just being bothered or sad, of course, sometimes we become very sad with that, but I think our task is to research, to propose reflections and actions, to try to propose uh, things to improve public policies in our society. This is the work that I have decided to do it, although that is a very questionable place always, this place of the Black intellectual woman. And the this uh, um, this uncomfortable is not just me, it's just me. This professor called Alex Ratz, he has a research about Black intellectuals. He's one of the responsible for us remind the memory of Black women intellectuals like Beatriz Nascimento. He reminds us that there is a certain problem with Black bodies that occupy spaces of power, that occupy the universe. And, and there is even it bothers even more when these Black bodies propose this change. As Professor Champika has said, that there are different ways of positioning yourself. You can be the naive kind, you can see the a spectator, but we also have the possibility of acting. So this is bothers the most. What we have seen in Brazil, that the entrance of Black students in the university bothers a lot still. And the more we raise in the hierarchy of the university, this is even worse. So this is the great debate, how to insert affirmative actions in an effective way. And not like we say in Brazil, we have a saying in Brazil, we say, just for the British to see, is an old saying. So it means that's not for real. So I'm talking a little bit about our research about the gender and ethnical racial in our institute, that's Negres. I I have been talking about this, and I have commented with the study groups that existed about this feeling, you know. So these students, you know, were became uh, very excited, you know, to start researching. So in these graphs, we have data collected from the Federal University of Rio de Janeiro. We are still working with this data. We have collected manually from many hands, and that has been is permanently checked. We are trying to become it better data, to become. What have we discovered? We have discovered that in our Center of Sciences in health, that is, uh, we have only 4,86% of Black professors in the post-graduation, but this is a high number within the university for post-graduation course. And always we have to remind that Black women are 28% of the population. You go to a place that the Black women are only less than 5%, and this is the highest number that we see in the universe. And as we see more complicated, let's say, cases that are in the technology centers, the engineering courses where Black women are less than 2%, or the mathematics or nature science where Black women is about just 0.5%. So these are recent data from the Federal University. What else have we discovered in our research? We have analyzed data from 6 universities that includes 325 post-graduation programs, and we have assessed over 3,500 lattes curriculum. What are we able to have already from this preliminary assessment? Black women are concentrated in post-graduation programs with qualifications that are considered less score, you know, in the university with scores 3 and 4. They are outside of the capital, the city of Rio de Janeiro, and particularly they are in areas of education, humanities, and care. And we are talking about BCs, nursing, humanities. These are areas that are dominantly, traditionally feminine. Talking specifically about our university, I'm not sure how many professors we are. We're between almost 3,000 professors at the Federal University of Rio de Janeiro, and there are only 39 Black women in the post-graduation programs. And also we have discovered that in our university, most of the post-graduation programs don't have even one black woman professor working there. We have a student of engineering that works in research. She generally uh, uh, likes to say that when we look, there are majority of the programs have no black women, and we have a lot of look like a program called 00000100. We also found out that those researching about this thematic, doing literature review, what has been published about Black women research, Black women professors, we see that the only ones researching about this are Black women ourselves. So, so these are is a theme that both the subjects and the thematic are subaltern, because if Black women do not dedicate to research this, nobody else will. So mentioning now an analysis done by Professor Luciana with students of high school. She teaches in the Cefet with the Federal Technical Center. And she found that there is a super qualification of the Black scientists working in the programs of post-graduation. And this corroborates research done before, like by Sueli Carneiro, that she says for a Black woman to get the same salary as a white woman, she needs to have um, uh, in average 5 more years of study in comparison to that white woman. So besides the fact that we are very few, we are occupying places that is much under our qualifications. We have curriculum of Black professors who have advised over 100 works of post-graduation with many multi-awards, several postdoc. They are overqualified. And the problematic is to think that to reach this place of super qualification and a lot of recognition, and some interviews have pointed out to us this, we're talking about overburden, overload of work that is immense. And we also are thinking what this generate for Black women, this extra load of work to occupy places lower of our qualification, and for the analysis and the trajectory of progression of these professionals. What we realize is something that Professor Champika also mentioned, that Black women and Black people in general have much more difficulty in progression in the career, access to scholarships and funding for their research. Let's talk about the case study of the Technology of Institute. This data was collected by students of electrical engineering in this center. In this data collection of the technology center, they found that the large majority, they are white men, like 72.26% are white men. And then we have women, non-blacks, but whites and Asian are included, uh, non-black women, so white and Asian. But when we get to Black professors, 0.9%, very low. What represents in absolute numbers. Let's say the Technologies Institute has 548 professors in post-graduation and only 5 Black women. Only 5 Black women among 548 professors. So I can imagine how much, how difficult. I'm uh, I'm in the sciences of health, so I can imagine a center of technology how much more complicated, because here is not easy. Another case study that's going to be published very soon in a magazine called Health in Debate. When we evaluate this data, just in the case of science of health, that includes nursing, nutrition, physical education, pharmacy, medicine, etc. In the area of health sciences, that's one of the areas that includes the care, and we are going to have more Black women. We have in the first, we are going to talk more about our university, that is UFRJ. We have the post-graduation program with more Black women professors than the entire university, and this is 4 professors in the post-graduation. And what we realize that even the analysis of these courses of health science, the most you get closer to areas of more status in the society, less Black women you're going to find. So medicine, the 3 areas of medicine that we call medicine 1, 2, and 3. One, we have 1 Black professor in medicine 1, and in medicine 2, in this that we have more status, we have no Black women at all. And this only comes to reconfirm the previous research that the more you go to a status hierarchy, and also in money, in payment, then is less women. This is the Fluminense Federal University is in our state, but outside of the capital, but very close. But is a younger university and smaller and less prestigious. The Federal University of Rio de Janeiro is one of the most prestigious universities in Latin America, is among the best in the world in several areas, is the oldest university in our country. So there is a certain weight in being part of the federal uh, universe. So we can see that the quantity of Black professors in this other universe is much higher. Even you see nursing, that is the first number, they are more than double. And we can see that evolution of the career in a smaller university, in less prestigious university, is faster, and there's less challenges. And our group has also evaluated some possible explanations for this phenomena. We have been working with the concept of structural racism. I am not going to talk about the concept that much because I think Professor Champeka has already done, but I think since Silvio de Almeida published his book, this concept become a little bit more clear about, talks about how the structural racism is part of our society. And then people think that it's normalized in our society, is reproduced by all institutions, but is put in practice, particularly by people, individuals, by me, by you, by our managers, and for those who decide public policies. Another concept that we have been using, we realize that one of the most powerful mechanisms to put in practice the the structural racism is the whiteness pact, uh, the whiteness narcissistic pact that are, she says, the professor that coined this term, she says this is our unconscious alliances. I'm not sure if they are unconscious. They are unconscious inter-white groups that are characterized by silencing about the racial issue. Either you deny or you don't say. And but particularly by the interdiction, by the stopping the income of Black people in spaces of power in all levels. So we analyze this data that we are collecting by the lens of the intersectionality that is going to allow us how these oppressions of race, class, and gender are interconnected in the experiences of Black women. Of all this data that are not so, you have just 5 minutes, just thank you. Now I'm trying to be faster. I was trying to be slower to help the translation, but what can we do? Many intellectuals, and they say that we say to get together, what we use the word in Portuguese, aquilombar, from quilombo, okay, this, the picture on the top, it was an extension project, Black women exercise in science, and this is the Cefet, was the Center for Federal Technical Center, and under the bottom picture is one of the meetings that we could meet presentially in the gender, in our group, that is the gender studies and ethnical racial relations. We observe that the women are muted, their voice are silenced, and we need to do something, and we cannot wait that the whiteness with their narcissistic pact do this for ourselves. So we say in Brazil, we for ourselves, can only count on us. So we are doing lectures, workshops, the theoretical, methodological formation of new young scientists. In this picture, this is Professor Luciana carrying out, these are girls, 15, 16 years old, because the Technical Institute is in high school level. They are invited to participate. They are invited to write, to participate in events. They learn how to write. They learn how to publish. They are awarded by our research. So this is a very important part of our work, to show these young women that despite the lack of representativity, despite all the obstacles that we are going to find on our path, there is no other option for us, but we have to promote changes for ourselves. And to close, I would like to talk a little bit about the pandemic scenario, which were the challenges that the pandemics brought to us. In this picture, this first of one is myself participating in a lecture with my baby in the center, Luciana, in her daily journey with her daughter homeschooling, and to the other picture, Professor Mariana. She's one of the coordinators. We are 3 of the 4 coordinators. She's trying to participate in an event with her 2 kids. And one research done by the group parenting has demonstrated that this group that we have researched and who we worked with was the group that was more affected in the academic world, more affected by the pandemic in the academic world, and 2 close, is important to say that we act for ourselves. We create ways of resist and to continue in our work. And it's also necessary public policies that our policymakers understand that we need specific actions for this group. And in the last years, we have had a little bit of some advances about what we call positive discrimination of maternity. So they are particularly direct to women who are recent mothers, but we still don't have a positive discrimination of Black professionals in the university. So we have to imagine that affirmative actions allowed the university to have almost 50% or a little bit more than 50% of Black students, but we don't have a positive discrimination in the support to the research. So we have to ask ourselves as a professor, as a manager, what are we doing to promote racial equity in our university? We have 50% of Black students in the undergraduate courses in our university. How many Black uh, postgraduates with scholarships, how many in the extension courses with scholarships, how you are working to generating opportunities for with positive discrimination of Black women within the academic universe. So I finish my talk in how we have to think to generate opportunity for Black girls in the academic world. Thank you very much. Here are our social networks for if you want to know more about our work. Thank you.
Thanks, Professor Ana Lucia. What a gift to share with us your research data that makes us realize the importance of this topic. And your work definitely is going to be reference to future works, not only within the higher education sector, but also maybe in the private sector, that organizations also start to exercise this type of responsibility. And we need to advance both here in the UK and also in Brazil as to foster policies and legislation so we can reinforce so these practices be mandatory and required practices to tackle racial inequality within the university and in the marketplace so we can reach a social change. I believe that your research presents four important aspects that have touched me personally, considering the topic of our commitment that the racial issue is not only an issue related to Blacks and to oppressed people, but it also should be involve white people. And I think it's interesting when you've mentioned that only Black women are interested in exploring this topic. I believe this is evolving in terms of our allies, those that were considered are considered as oppressors and become indeed our allies in the advocacy of this issue. Another interesting aspect is that you try to change this narrative of victim towards an empowerment narrative. So each person can be empowered to fight against their reality. And your research has showed that in a phenomenal way. And also the matter of intersector dimension, considering the dimensions of gender, ethnicity, and social groups. And finally, the impact of the pandemic, especially for mothers and Black women that were the most impacted by the pandemic. And this is very clear, especially among us mothers and Black women. Well, thanks for sharing the data of your research. This is an initiative, and we wait enthusiastically to see your final publication. And we are very glad to have you here today. I believe that now we are going to the Q&A session, right, Tamires? Yes, we have 6 minutes. So we ask you if you wanna ask anything to Professor Lianage and Professor Nunes. Please put your question under the Q&A button, because we are moving towards the third and last workshop. So I'm gonna read the questions in Portuguese, and Sueli is going to read the ones in English. So I have 2 questions, and then are going to give the floor to the professors so they can answer. The first question is from Joaquim, and he asks Professor Ana, why CFC age was not analyzed within the context of your research? And another comment from Luciana Espinola, who is part of the research, and she says, congratulations to the speakers for this event. Thank you, Ana Lucia, for this opportunity to show our work with Black women doing science and Negrex. I'm very proud of it. Can you read this one in English, Sueli?
Anonymous attendee. From personal experience as a Black PhD student and staff proactively engaged in race equality discussions, consultations at my university, I feel that there is an overburden of responsibility on people of color, I believe. How can universities be informed and seriously, actively consider this? Is there a duty of care in anti-racist policies referencing to these? Thanks. Okay, so I don't know who you want to answer first. Professor Champika, would you like to comment on that?
Yeah, I'm still really thanks, Sueli. So from
the point.
So overburden of responsibility for staff or students. PhD, as a PhD students, does the student feels that they are overburden of responsibility? I'm trying to be. I mean, of course, there's a duty of care as staff and students regarding in terms of developing or revising anti-racist policies, I believe, and also in terms of how universities can be informed to consider the, I'm not sure about the first part, but proactively engaged in race equality discussions. I think it's very important. That's why in my presentation also I mentioned that at least we have to have frequent mandatory workshops for staff and students to promote this and promote this to have race equality discussions. And currently, perhaps maybe Sweli, you know more than me, but within our race equality charter also, there could be some consultations going on to promote race equality within the university. So I think compared to a few years ago, the discussions are coming more and actions are coming more. So it's applicable to all levels of students. And of course, as a student and a staff, we do have a duty of care in developing or revising anti-racist policies and pushing the management to actually develop anti-racist policies. I'm not sure whether I answered the question well, but over to you, Sweli. Sorry.
No, it makes total sense. I think it's related to raising awareness. And then here at UCLan, for example, I don't know at the university of this student and his staff, they have the Race Equality Charter Mark is a framework university can adopt. In Brazil, it's something similar to the certification of ISO 9000, ISO 9000, and like it's quite commercial. But I know you mentioned about the Athena Swan project. So you have these frameworks universities follow. It's not mandatory, it is optional, but a lot of universities are driving that direction, even though because, for example, Athena Swan became one of the criteria, Professor Anna, to understand that, to get funding. So if the university doesn't have Athena Swan, they would not be awarded with more funding. So there is, but they don't have that for the race equality. So that is the next step, to have race equality as well becoming that mandatory requirement for research funding, for projects involvement, and then get more benefits for these universities. So a lot of universities are running Athena Swan. Everyone wants to have Athena Swan, to have gender. Athena Swan is more about gender equality. I want to hear if Professor Anna would like to comment on that, about the budget, because you mentioned that about the thematic being more about, you know, Black women just get involved. Do you agree with that?
Olha, eu penso que
Bem, pessoalmente, I believe that the task is once again up to us, on us. It's up to Black people to fight this racism. So if this is seen as our task, it is hard to advance anti-racist policies because we do not have too much power, and we must consider the agreement of the dialogue. If I'm speaking, someone must listen to me actively, interestedly. And for me, this is a task that is up to us, Black population, who unfortunately lacks of power. And the anti-racist policies in Brazil is a product of the Black movement work, but it is also important to have white people as allies because they are more powerful within our society and they are policymakers. So I consider that if we think that racial policies are considered Black people's problems, issues, we are not going to advance, so we need allies. Personally, I have taught in a course about diversity to our staff in our university. We didn't have many attendees, unfortunately, and our final analysis is that there are difficulties to understand that anti-racism is a need. People continue denying the racial problems, so we do need measures that come from up bottom. With respect to the Center of Philosophy and Humanities that was not analyzed, it is part of our research. It was comprised in our research, but I didn't show it here because actually we work more with the data from our institute. But the data from CFCH, from the Department of Philosophy and Humanities, will be analyzed. So do not worry, Joaquin. We'll have this data briefly, and surely we are gonna transmit them, communicate them. Well, I'd like to make this last question and we can wrap up with it. So I'm gonna ask this question for both professors so they can answer and wrap up their presentation. So it comes from Valentina and she says, could you comment about Black adolescents and with respect to curriculum and how the epistemological racism models the curriculum at the universities. Could you comment on this, please? And then you could make your final considerations. Can you start, Professor Nunes? Well, so answering Valentina, well, I think the challenges are, they come up every day. The challenges that we face, just as a matter of example, our research has shown that the path of Black professors, Black women professors, is full of obstacles. For example, they have research projects, applications to scholarship that the result is very lower in comparison to white women. So this narrative and this white people pact is seen as perpetrated every day, and this is perpetrated by our colleagues that are on our side, that comes with us, that study with us. These people who are used to live with Black folks, but as employees, as subordinates. So we do see these everyday problems, and it is very difficult to change the curricula because we simply do not manage to approve these changes. For example, if we have a board of directors that is composed completely by white people, it is very hard to make the changes. So it is a challenging issue, but we keep our work and we continue our journey. But, well, on one hand, we have these difficulties, but on the other hand, we do not have any other alternatives. It is tiring, but we must continue in our path and knowing that we're not alone. And I want to wrap up thanking you, Sueli, Tamires, Professor Lianage, and also thanking the 50 students that work with me in our lab. It's very tiresome, but it's really rewarding when I look back, mainly when I look at my Black girls and students, when we see they are recognized by their knowledge, by their path, and maybe if we hadn't opened these spaces, these young ladies would not have had their capacities being recognized. So we must believe and see that our task continued by those who are coming after us and that have been started for those who came before us. Thank you very much. Professor Champika.
We have only 5 minutes left. I think you on mute, Professor.
Sorry, as I understood, the question is about how to change the curriculum. Sorry, Tamiris, quickly, can you?
Okay, let me just quickly say it's about what is the challenges of the researchers, the Black researchers facing racism, epistemologic racism, and then how they can determine or influence on the curriculum, and then and the work and the modalities in the university.
All right. In terms of, I mean, in our institution, especially in our school, I think I've been in terms of research students. Surprisingly, we have a large ethnic minority PhD research students compared to white students. So I have seen their progress and their development and things that they can contribute to the school's progress as well. So in my view, at least in my role as a researcher and a professor, I have always tried to get them involved in teaching, not just like whilst they're doing their PhD research, get them involved in different kinds of activities so that we can progress their career, and things can be added to their CV once they actually pass out their PhD. So we have been trying quite a lot in getting them involved in different activities rather than just doing the PhD research. But as I understand, problems still exist when it comes to finding, maybe especially during these days, employability or something like that. And also in terms of curriculum, I'm not that much involved in undergraduate curriculum or postgraduate taught, but in terms of research curriculum, we have done a lot of changes within our research services to enhance inclusivity and attract more ethnic minorities, given that in the UK most of the maybe white students, they don't prefer, they don't come to do full-time PhDs, at least in our engineering area. Most of the students, 90% of the students we've got are from ethnic minorities, as I say. So in that particular context, we are trying their best, and we see a lot of improvements in their progression, actually.
Thank you, Professor. Okay, do you want to say any final words? Or are you?
Yeah, I need to thank you, Sweli, you especially for contacting me to do this session, and also to all the organizers. And I can see this is my first Zoom session in terms of with a translation and a different platform. So it's really, really a good experience. Thanks a lot for the organizers, and Sweli, I'm really.
Thank you very much. I'll be very brief because I think we are kind of, thank you so much for our speakers and Tamiris and everyone else involved in this project. We will have this final words by our Master of Ceremony, Anastasia, and I'll pass to Tamiris to say her final words and pass it to close the event. Thank you so much to everyone.
Thanks.
Na verdade, vamos chamar Anastácia. Anastácia, fecha aí.
Actually, let's call Anastasia. Anastasia, come to the floor. Well, we thank you once again, everyone. Now we're gonna have a break, 10-minute break, and you can access the third workshop through the link, so we can explore more of this topic. And I'd like to thank GSN Traduções, Eco, Gabriela, Paula, partnership with Mika, Institute Notes, and Grace that supports financially this event. So see you soon. Bye-bye.
Nós enviaremos também uma avaliação no final para todos.
We're also gonna send an final assessment form later on.
Até já.